Yeah, just for the record, I'm not gonna like pay a monthly subscription fee to get Eaglemoss $25 whatchamacallits one a month. Like, as awesome as that sounds, I'm kind of picky. I'm kind of finicky when it comes to like what kind of starships I would want to get, what kind of shuttlecraft, whatever it is. So like I'm not going to subscribe for something like that. I would rather cherry pick like I'm doing right now. So speaking of cherry picking, I kind of wish they hadn't mentioned it in the magazine for the SSM it because well it kind of spoils what I'm about to come up with next. And that would be the Warp Delta. The Warp Delta appears in I think they said 2 episodes of Enterprise, and then that was the end of that. So it was the Warp Delta, as previously described in that magazine, looks almost exactly the same as the Emmet, but it's supposed to be a technological evolution of what the Warp Delta. Wow, that's a really big gap in there. That's surprising. This is kind of the technological successor to the Emmet, so that's what the Warp Delta is. And like I said, it's virtually identical. It's just kind of an updated version. It's a brand new hull, and there's new warp engine nacelles, which actually have transparent plastic for the grills, and they also have transparent plastic along the back of the ship or the back of the nacelles. So I mean, it's still this kind of same basic shape, it's kind of the whole point of it, but it's a little more prominent, and you can see there's some more Trekky or Star Trek details, such as this structure right here, which is reminiscent of the one on the NX-01. It's kind of the same thing. You can see that's so you can see like there's an evolution of technology. What shows up here eventually shows up right here. So that's what they're aiming for. Huh. And then you can see there's a prominent, well, kind of sort of, you can see there's a prominent bridge, like actual bridge that's right there. Because the ship is a bit larger than the previous one. At least I think it is. The Emmet was what 130 meters, I think. So there's an actual bridge module that becomes trademark of Starfleet and Federation starships afterwards. So it's a bit more prominent there, and you've got a much more prominent. I don't know what these things are supposed to be because it's not the navigational deflector, because again that's something that you would find on the front of the ship, but that's not here. So you can kind of see like the evolution, the beginnings of what will eventually become a saucer section. So that's what this is implying right here. Unless I miss my guess, although I could be wrong. Oh, there's some little splotches of gold paint. I'm sorry. This time yeah, okay. This time they do have. Okay. So the Emmet would not have navigational lights because it's a prototype. It's a test model, as opposed to the Warp Delta, which does have navigation lights. There's navigation lights on either side here, and then there's navigation lights on the top and on the bottom. There's something rattling in there. I don't like that. Oh, hello. What on earth? Those those little bubbles. Oh, that's interesting. You know how the back end of the what is it? What's it, the TOS Enterprise? The nacelles had those bubbles, the kind of a dome or whatever it is on the backside. Well, this has exactly the same thing, except they're colored. They're transparent blue. Huh. That's interesting. Evolution of technology. The rattling sound I just heard is these two little domes on the back. They must be like a little. Um, oh, it's probably like a peg that they just stick in there or something like that. No, it is more than that. It's actually the warp grill. Wait, does the warp grill deliberately open? No, I don't think so. Well, oh, it's a single piece. Okay, that makes sense. So, hmm. Okay, so the left engine's warp grill, warp engine grill is I don't know how well you can see that, but it's a little loose. So long as it doesn't outright pop out, I think it'll be okay. So it'll rattle, it'll move, but whatever. Ooh, I see that. One of the problems with the Starship replicas is that the window. Oh wow, they're all over the place. Holy smokes! One of the problems, and I've heard this on a number of Eaglemoss kits, in addition to this, is that the the tamped on windows, the paint for the windows, is just due to mass production. The windows will be offset. They won't go into the grooves that they're designed to do. So even though there's molded windows, the paint for the windows is not inside of the windows, the white paint. And that's along the top edges and along the front. So there's a row. I'm not going to be able to show it to you because it's too fuzzy. But there's a row of windows here, and the same on the other side. There's a row of windows that's been molded in, but the paint was not added in the proper place. There is paint there. It's just it's off center. It's offset. So that's not cool. And then along the front of the bridge also has some additionally indented windows. Now it's not the windscreen or it's not the view screen. These ships don't have view screens. Suck at CBS, but there is like captain's quarters or captain's mess or whatever. Um, those windows are off center. The bridge does have a dome that's painted white, but the dome is centered properly. It is okay, but all the other windows seem to be bleh. So that's an issue. If I were to write them and tell them I want a replacement, it wouldn't matter because this is number one of however many hundreds, maybe even or hundreds, right? How many tens of thousands they've made of these things. There wouldn't be any point to me contacting them because I've heard that's a common complaint with many Eagle Moss ships, not just this one. Um, the there is a little drift, just the tiniest drift on the NX1 and the USS Calvin that I've got. They all have a little bit of drift on them. Not enough for me to complain though. But in this case, it's like, okay, yeah, that's actually noticeable. One thing that surprises me is the impulse engines. Or actually, let me try this again. The impulse engines are painted on. They're actually a dark blue. So they're supposed to be I think they're supposed to be the same color as the warp engine grill or whatever it is. So they're very tiny little dots just above my fingers there on the edge of these two prongs. They're right there. So they're painted on and you can actually see them. Here's my problem though. On the 10-inch or 9-inch NX01 Enterprise, the impulse engines are painted in, and I'm fairly certain those impulse engines were not painted in, which disappointed me. They don't even have like any molded spot for them to be in, so for whatever reason they just chose not to paint these, mold them, or anyways. Even though the impulse engines were painted on, they were a little also slightly sloppy. Not like disgustingly so, but like they just kind of painted a band straight across as opposed to, and they ignored that vertical, very very tiny vertical piece that's actually supposed to separate the housings of the impulse engine. So like technically there are four impulse engines sitting right here of various sizes. Instead, they just did a quick like with a paintbrush and called it good. It's strange that the Warp Delta actually has the impulse engines painted correctly when this 10-inch, much more expensive version is was not painted with the exact same accuracy or whatever it is. So, it would be kind of neat if the warp pilot or the warp grills or whatever it is would actually slip outwards by design, slip out on purpose. It'd be kind of interesting, kind of like kind of like a feathering effect. I think that'd be kind of something they could exploit in a future generation of Star Trek if they can actually get Star Trek back on its feet again. Just saying. And then there's a couple of copper or gold colored paint highlights there. So, but yeah, if the Emmet is the prototype or is the test model or is a test ship, then the Warp Delta, which actually weighs less. That's weird. The Warp Delta actually weighs less. So we've got the Emmet on the right and the Warp Delta on the left. You can see there's a slight. They're pretty much the same. You know, the silhouettes are pretty much the same, and let's see, their silhouettes are pretty much the same. Although it's interesting, the Warp Delta is not quite as thick. Again, Emmet on the right and Warp Delta on the left. So, yeah. So this is kind of featureless, bare bones, whatever it is, as opposed to an actual starship this time. Wait till I read the magazine, though. So why did I get the Warp Delta if the SS Emmet is so similar? Well, I got them because they're so similar. It's like I liked features of the Emmet, and also the fact that it appeared in the show, but I also liked the evolution of it, to see like the next evolution of it in the form of the Warp Delta. Which, by the way, this doesn't have a name. Warp Delta is the class of ship, not the individual name. The SSM, I assume this is like the only one of its kind. I'll have to read through that magazine, but whatever. So like this is the first evolution of it. So there's only going to be like one or maybe two of these ever built, but these are going to be produced on a larger scale. So there's going to be multiples of this. So, but that said, we don't have names for any of these. So whatever. There may very well be names, but I don't. You know, now that I think about it, they don't have any markings. There's no name of the ship or the hull number. You know, maybe it's that thing where like they didn't start to name ships and they didn't start to put hull numbers on them until they got to the NX class. Maybe that's the statement they were trying to make with these. But anyways, as um, I was definitely going to get the Emmet, but I was like, the Warp Delta is kind of neat enough. Like, I only need to get one. I only want to get one. You know what? You could get two for $50 and then call it good. So I ended up getting both because why not? I was only planning to get the Emmet, but the Warp Delta was kind of interesting enough. I was like, yeah, maybe I can make up the excuse. Okay, so it looks like the Warp Delta is also slightly longer, but there's definitely more diecast in here. Is there even any? Oh, there's not. There's no diecast in the Warp Delta. Hmm. I didn't know that. There's no diecast in here. Strange. Huh. I would have thought there would be. This is the first this is the first Eaglemoss ship I've gotten where I don't think there's any diecast in here. Great. Now I've got Faith of the Heart buzzing through my head now. Hooray. So yeah, you only see the Warp Delta twice. The first time you see it is in the last episode of season 2, which is technically the beginning of the Zindi arc. So you only see it then, and then the other time you see it is in the season 3 episode again. During the Zindi arc, you see it as in the what was it called? Twilight. Yeah, you see it in Twilight. So yeah, so that's the only time you're going to see the Warp Delta. So yeah, again, which gives it only slightly more exposure than the SSM at, but and the display stand is almost identical. Ooh, there's a hair that belongs to somebody other than me. That's nice. Oh wow. Oddly, I just vacuumed in here yesterday. Oh well. Oh, well, the felt on the bottom is very nice. So there's again Warp Delta. And that's all that it says. Oh yeah, trademark and copyright 2017 CBS Studios. Oh, so this came out just as STD came out. And that fits right again between the impulse cells. Oh, well, that fits on very nicely with friction. Very nice. So there's the warp delta on its display stand. And again, right just to either side of the impulse engines. Nice. So there's the warp delta. Now onto the magazine. So here we have the warp delta magazine. Type is an escort, launched in the 22nd century, crew of 30, and a length of 130 meters. So she's an identical length to the SS Emmett and has the same number of crew. I think. Was it 30 or 31? Doesn't matter. There's probably a dog somewhere in there, anyways. That's a nice angle of the ship right there. I like that. Affiliation United Earth Starfleet. You know, why don't they just call it United Earth Space Probe Agency and be done with it? That was one of the big complaints that we checkers had about Enterprise when it came out in 2001. Just saying. Length of 130 meters approximately, crew of 30, top speed warp 3, and weaponry is plasma cannons. Kind of an evil looking ship when you look at it from down in front. The Warp Delta was one of the first ships to serve with the United Earth Starfleet. I guess they do call it United Earth, or they do, yeah. Before it was part of the Federation, yeah, it was called. Oh, hello. There's some detail that's missing. I caught that right off the bat. There's Starfleet ships are known for having thin red lines, thin red lines for highlights. And there's a couple of them right here on this one picture of the Warp Delta, but they are not present on the ship itself. There's also some additional gold paneling on the dorsal, which is not present on here. I picked up on that immediately, so I kind of sort of hope to make a bigger version of this, but whatever. It's really nice. It's a nice shot of the Warp Delta right there. The Warp Delta was one of the first ships to serve with United Earth Starfleet. It was equipped with warp nacelles and could accommodate a crew of around 30. It was mainly used in planetary defense and survey roles. Yeah. After the Xindi dispatched a prototype of their superweapon that attacked Earth and killed around 7 million people, Starfleet boosted the planet's defense forces. This included operating several vessels, including Warp Delta starships, in the Sol system that could be called upon to engage threats at a moment's notice. An early version, because the Warp Delta is so similar to the M, and now there's going to be crossbreeding descriptions of both. So, like they mentioned the Warp Delta in the SS Emmett's magazine, now the reverse is going to be true. The SS Emmett's going to be mentioned in the Warp Delta magazine. So, here's one right here. An early version of the Warp Delta featured rocket-style engines on the rear of the main body. As propulsion technology improved, these were upgraded with more advanced impulse engines. Warp Delta starships were used alongside larger vessels such as the Intrepid as a defense force to protect Earth. Two Warp Delta ships and the Intrepid come to the aid of Enterprise when it was attacked by the Klingons. You know, I've been debating whether or not I wanted to get the Intrepid, but like, do I want to bother with it? Because like, I seriously doubt that the Intrepid would be any bigger than this. So I was like, do I really want to mess with that? Like, in an alternate timeline in which Earth had been destroyed by the Xindi, Warp Delta ships were part of the small fleet that attempted to defend the last remaining humans who had set up a colony on Ceti Alpha 5. Oh, the historical irony. I need to stop using that phrase. The Warp Delta The Warp Delta comprised many of the elements that would come to characterize Starfleet ship design for the next 200 years. It included warp nacelles attached by pylons to the ship and the bridge located in a raised section on top of the main hull. The entire ship was clad in polarized armor plating that could clearly be seen in a patchwork of metal coverings. Yeah, yeah. You know, this picture right here looks even more like the Romulan bird of prey that you saw in Balance of Terror. Very much looks like that. I wouldn't surprise me if they mention that someone here at some point. Oh, that's the warp core. Whoa! I didn't know that. So that little blue dot that appears on the top and bottom, this, let's see, I'm trying to get out of shadow. That right there, there's a little blue dot right there, which is only like 2 pixels wide or whatever it is. And then there's an equally large one right there. That's the warp core. So holy smokes, the warp core was actually exposed to the vacuum of space. Yikes. That's not scary at all. Prior to the NX project, which was set up in the early 2140s, human ships were incapable of exceeding Warp 2. In 2143, the NX Alpha briefly broke the Warp 2 barrier before it exploded, which is seen in Season 2. I can't remember what the episode was called. Shortly after, the NX Beta reached Warp 2.5 with Jonathan Archer and A.G. Robinson piloting the craft. Mm-hmm. During the first half of the 22nd century, freighters belonging to the Earth Cargo Service was humanity's only real presence in outer space. It was not until the development of faster warp engines in the latter half of the century, which were fitted to ships like the Warp Delta, that humanity really began to explore the galaxy. Is it just the one cannon? Oh, that's a sensor array. Hmm. Wait, phase cannon where? I don't see it. It's like phase cannon located here, but like when you look at the actual ship itself, you can't see anything. So it's like, where is it? It's on the underside, ahead of the, what's this called? The lateral sensor dome. Oh, so that's a sensor dome right there. So apparently there's a phase cannon sitting up there just ahead of just behind the tip of the nose. Huh. One of John Eves. Of course it's John Eves. Why wouldn't it be? Although to be fair, John Eves, like he was involved in all this, and he was part of the movies, so it doesn't surprise me that he was part of Enterprise. One of John Eves' ideas for what would become the Warp Delta was an evolution of the space shuttles that have recently been used in NASA. That's the one I was talking about when I was, that poster that John Eves did that had the one space shuttle I was telling you about earlier. They're mentioning that here. The basic Delta shape was used, but it was felt the ship should look more advanced. Yeah. Yeah. They're kind of sort of rehashing what they were talking about uh, with the SS Emmet. There's nothing here. This was the final version of the Warp Delta. John Eves paid particular attention to surface details so that it roughly matched that found on the Enterprise. Yeah, but they show a picture of the Emmet, not the Warp Delta. It's strange. They don't talk about the Warp Delta anymore. Instead, the primary article is Planet Earth, A Secret History. Star Trek Enterprise spent more time on Earth than ever before as the planet grew into a major galactic force. We barely saw Earth in the original series, though it did make an appearance in one of the fantasies that the Telosians pulled from Pike's mind. That was in the pilot episode, The Cage. The crew of the Enterprise D returned to Earth on a couple of occasions. Next Generation, the Enterprise D. The most memorable was in the episode Family, which saw Picard visit his ancestral home. I saw, it's not. It's not. But if that isn't two Ghostbusters right there, I don't know what is. I'm just saying. That's the first thing. It's like, whoa, it's Ray and Peter, but no, it's not. Earth's past has appeared more often than the 23rd or 21st century versions. Deep Space Nine showed us how dark that past could be when the Bell riots or with the Bell riots in past tense. That's the name of the episode, Past Tense 1 and 2. What? What? In the early days of the original series, Kirk's Enterprise appeared to be an Earth ship rather than a Federation vessel. Wait, what? In the early days of the original series of TOS, Kirk's Enterprise appeared to be an Earth ship rather than a Federation vessel. What? Mike Sussman, who's a production designer for the series Enterprise, had the production base the Earth government logo on a symbol that had appeared in the second pilot. Must be talking about from the episode where No Man had gone before. No Man has gone before. Gosh, you can barely see it. There's a shot from Enterprise, and the logo they're talking about right there There's a very tiny Earth that's like blue ocean, and then gold or copper continents on there, and it's just some water. Like what? Really? Whatever. I was just assuming it was a variation of the United Nations logo. Oh God, I don't need to see that. Why? Don't do that. They've got Dr. Fox going. The attack on Earth influenced the development of the NX-02, which became a more militaristic ship and forced Phlox to confront racism. When you look like that, absolutely. More militaristic? Really? Not that I could tell. Not everyone on Earth was happy about the influence aliens were having on their society, and Paxton wanted to expel them all. Paxton led a group who would have been horrified by the very idea of the Federation. For them, involvement with different cultures only made life worse. Hypocrite. There it is. So on-screen appearance, first episode was The Expanse, TV appearances Enterprise, and it was designed by John Eaves. After a devastating attack on Earth by a probe of unknown origin, Enterprise is recalled home. On the way home, Captain Archer is abducted by the Suliban, and a shadowy figure tells him that the probe was sent by the Xindi. Archer is all right, I won't say that because it's kind of spoiler. Oh yeah, sure. It's a 19-year-old spoiler. Sure. Actually, it'd be a 17-year spoiler, something like that. Blah 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 blah. The remaining human fleet, including Warp Delta starships, puts up a valiant fight. Blah. Spoiler. 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 Here's again that poster from the SSM It's magazine that shows what's the poster that John Eaves produced, which is right there, and then that's a screenshot from the episode Twilight, and you can see. I think that's a warp delta right there, just above my finger. That's a warp delta, and I believe there's another one getting cut off right there. So all you can see is the nacelle and a little bit of the pylon. So that's two warp deltas right there. The ragtag fleet. Very Battlestar Galactica. Deliberately, of course. Coming in issue 83, the Bajoran assault vessel. Yeah, maybe 3 years ago. And there it is, recommendation for eaglemoss.com / what does that say? Shop. Yeah, I can't read it backwards on my screen. Is that it? Yep, that. Oh, every 2 weeks at your retailer. Okay. So there you go. The Warp Delta. And again, they don't have any names, so you can't really call it by anything else. So still, nice, neat little magazine. Interesting thing to have. I like the in-depth. I like how these are so detailed. For something so small. Like you're actually paying more for the magazine than you are the ship itself. Although according to the shipping thing, this apparently the magazines are free, and this is what you're actually paying for. This is what your $25 pays for. So don't drop it, please. I think the only thing I'm surprised about with the Warp Delta is that it doesn't have any diecast metal on it. That's really really surprising. Like the Emmet is heavy. The SS Emmet is heavy because it had diecast metal in it. The NX-01 is definitely heavy because it's diecast. But the Warp Delta, not so much. I'm surprised. I'm not complaining. I'm just like, It's the only one of these I have that has no diecast metal on it. So I guess diecast metal is becoming a bit of a lost art in the year 2017.